Hey, welcome to the Vibe Radio. Yanni Wanwason here, and joining me today is special guest Jennifer Cunnings of My Heart Reiki. Jennifer, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Once again, I'm very happy that you were able to come in, or not come and call in today, by chance. But
Thank you for that.
not a problem, not a problem. So I was, so you and Tracy are involved with healing processes together, and that's what definitely interested me in speaking with you, because first off, she was a great conversation to speak with, and she mentioned all the work she does with you, and that definitely got me interested in what exactly you're bringing. So just really briefly, can you explain what exactly you do with Reiki healing?
Sure. Well, Reiki was actually the foundation, the starting gate of my practice, and I still incorporate Reiki, and of course that's my name. My business name is My Heart Reiki, but
Mm-hmm.
really it's kind of a hodgepodge of different types of energy healing.
Okay.
So I work with clients one on one, and it's I would say it's like a mixture between a therapy session, a counseling, coaching session, combined with, getting onto a massage table and opening up the pathways and clearing out the blocks and, helping people to reach, higher states of peace and happiness, essentially. And so, like I was saying earlier, when you're working with energy, it's a little bit difficult to describe because it's beyond words, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
but the actual sessions just can vary significantly depending on what the needs are of the people. But we always incorporate some coaching and some energy healing. And then Tracy and I, we've done classes together, and we share some space together where we do workshops, things around meditation, teaching people how to work with energy for their own self-care and development, amongst many other things. So it's kind of a balance between the one-on-one and then empowering people with information and insight, and helping to get them to, connect within for themselves.
Yeah, I saw on the page, part of the purpose was to help create reality of your dreams for the individual, and it really got me thinking, like, if you're seeing a lot of these multiple individuals that are coming in for help and trying to live the life they envision in their mind, what exactly are you commonly seeing people want to do?
Well, it's not as much as what they want to do, it's what's preventing them from getting in the way.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah. And so often, we have a lot of programs that are running in the background and our subconscious mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those can also they get stuck in our energy field. And so it's kind of a mixture of helping people to become aware of what it is that might be holding them back. Like, they might have a fear and they didn't even know that they had that fear. Or they might be running a program that says, I'm not worthy and I don't deserve this. And so every time they go to, create something, try to execute a desire, there's a block. And so more often than not, people can have clarity about what it is they want to do, what they want to move towards, because they get in touch with that place, but then they get stuck. And so that's where, I come in, is to see what areas that are preventing them. And it's usually like trapped emotions and belief systems.
Uh-oh.
And so we work to move the belief systems out of the way, so
Okay.
then they can create their desire. Yeah.
Yeah, so before you were teaching everyone about this, what were your own like hurdles you had to overcome before before you got like really really into Reiki and healing through energy?
Well, I've actually been working with energy healing for 20 years. I started when I was 18, so I grew up in California, where we're much more open to the energy healing than Texas is slowly blossoming. Thankfully, there's a beautiful community here. But I think one of the number one things I've seen personally in myself and in others is we start to pick up a lot of information, right? We read these metaphysical or self-help books. We watch the Tony Robbins or whoever the inspiring teachers are,
Uh-huh.
And we get all this information about how we can make these changes, how we can, create the life of our dreams and what we need to do. And it all gets kind of stuck up in our mind. And so then it's like we're moving forward and really trying to figure out, well, why am I not reaching my goals? Why am I not reaching my dreams? And it's kind of, it all gets kind of stuck up in the mental aspect of ourselves. And so we've got to take it down into the feeling part of ourselves, because we really create from our feelings. And often it's the feelings that are stuck, like those old programs I was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that get in the way. And so I would say the number one thing I see is people get in their own way with
Mm-hmm.
their thoughts. And so, and we're really unaware of the thoughts that are going through our mind on a daily basis. There's some statistic out there, like we have, 60,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah, it's like something crazy.
Yeah. And so like a super high percentage of those thoughts are usually a judgment about ourselves or
Uh-huh.
other people even.
Oh,
So we've
wow.
got a lot of negativity in the background that we're not even aware of, or a lot of people are not aware of. I shouldn't generalize.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So really, it's like what it sounds like is the biggest hurdle is yourself, and once you change that mentality, it all seems to get a little bit better. But the first thing is you need to, I guess it comes with feeling, and then after feeling comes action. But if you don't feel up to the task, I guess that's why you'll never do it.
yeah, and feeling, it's like, so if let's say I have a lot of anger, right? And then in that anger, I'm blaming the outside world for all of my problems. I'm a good victim where, everything bad happens to me, and I'm so frustrated and I can't stand it. And why does this always have to happen to me, right? I'm so stressed out. Everybody wants something from me. And there's this kind of blaming mentality, a victim mentality, and then it gets, it brings up the emotions of frustration and anger. Well, then what happens is, most often than not, the person's like, oh, I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be frustrated. Like, that's not how I want to feel. And so what we do is we resist it. We resist the emotion and we judge it, and then we kind of push it away because we reach for a happier feeling. But in doing that, all those emotions stay stuck. And so if we go into the energy of these feelings, which is what I help facilitate in my sessions, and instead of resisting it and pushing it away and, thinking anger and frustration is bad, we start to actually commune with it, and we start to work energetically with it so that it doesn't have to exist for the person anymore. And then that roadblock can be, dissolved.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be in the way.
So do you find like there are also some instances of, I guess the range of how important these problems are, varies. But do you ever come across, problems that you necessarily don't think are problems, or does everything just have a deeper root and you dig down to that?
Yeah, I'm a digger.
Yeah.
I facilitate people in digging as deep as they're willing to go and feel as much feeling as they're willing to feel, and, be as open and vulnerable as possible. I tend to never see a problem as just a happen circumstance, and I don't believe in coincidences.
Okay.
And I try to support my clients in viewing their world and their experience as a big mirror, to where everything that shows up for them is an opportunity to look within. So it's, if a client is willing to do the work, then it's a very introspective process, but it's not just like, oh, let me look inside and, oh, isn't that interesting about me? Like therapy gets us all looking inside and a bunch of awareness. But with the energy healing aspect, with the Reiki and all these other things, we can actually dig into it and pull it out, so it doesn't have to be there anymore without psychoanalyzing it to death.
So,
and sorry for the therapists out there. I love therapy. I mean, therapy is amazing, but sometimes it keeps us in the cerebral aspect of things and doesn't allow us to get to the root.
So when you were learning about this, then did you? I guess it's up to a fine line, between of the mind and of the, I want to say like of the spirit or of the, the soul, did, like, where did you like come across that divide, if any, when you're studying? Because I'm thinking when you're fresh starting, it makes sense. It's all in the mind, and then you're thinking of psychology and those kinds of studies. But then, at what point did you find out it's a little bit more than just the synapses and whatnot in your brain?
I don't even know how to answer that question. No. I think it was just an evolution. Like it's interesting. I studied a lot of psychology in college, and I studied interpersonal communications in college, but I also studied like religion in college, and simultaneously outside of college began studying energy and metaphysics. And so I think the combination of those two just was the evolution. Yeah. I've taken I'm a coach as well, a holistic health practitioner, and so I think it just ended up being a culmination of all these different beautiful teachings. And then ultimately, I think for all people who are in this kind of work, we start to develop our own gifts and how we're supposed to show up for other people. And there's, that's where there's no real label for that, No.
So how did you end up studying healing outside of college? Because then that makes it sound like it's like something you came across or like happened by or like introduced to.
Yeah, so almost similar to Tracy's story, but it didn't happen to me. It happened to my mom, and she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr, and chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome. So she had a whole flurry of diagnoses that there was nothing the Western world had any, idea of in terms of how to support this. And often a lot of these types of diseases are usually emotionally based. And so in her search for healing, she started to explore alternative medicine and naturopathy, energy healing, acupuncture, of course. And so I think I was in high school at the time, and just kind of through that exposure, a little spark got lit. And I took my first Reiki class and started reading some amazing books. Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters. Judith Orloff is an author that's written a couple books that just opened me up, and I've just been on the path ever since. Well, not professionally, because then once I finished college, I went and did a 15-year stint in human resources and recruiting. So I had my corporate world. Yeah.
No, that was interesting too. I saw it was like a big chunk of being in the corporate world, but then you went back to what you started with, which was the healing. So that was pretty interesting. I wanted to know like what sparked that sudden turn.
Well, it was interesting. After I took my very first Reiki class, I had this, just that awareness that it was going to be a part of my life, but I had no idea how. And then I had this idea that I should probably go to college, because if I did do this kind of work, I'd probably have to validate myself, which now I believe now I realize that was just a belief system. But, and then once I finished college, it was like, well, time to make money and pay off those school loans.
Yep.
And, next thing you know, you're 15 years in, you're like, where did the time go? And then you realize like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. This is out of alignment with who I am and what my purpose is and what, I'm supposed to be doing in the world. And then, the universe subtly starts to move you out.
No, I completely understand. Well, it's almost that time for us to take our first music break. So coming up is Monday Chill Tunes number 6 by Lunis. Monday Chill number 6 by Lindesis. And this is Yanni Wasson back with Jennifer Cunnings of My Heart Reiki. And Jennifer, before we left, you were talking about the education process of learning about the energy healing. So why don't we talk a little bit more about? I saw you. Let's see, where was it? You were a Reiki master teacher in 2011. And I saw you mentioned it was like a rigorous process. So that definitely interested me.
Yeah, so I took a kind of an extensive training where it probably took about a year. But I actually teach classes myself and kind of condensed it. But if somebody wants to actually be a teacher, then I have a mentorship internship program. So Reiki is traditionally taught in 3/4 levels. So there's millions of Reiki level 1 practitioners in the U.S. Millions, or at least a million, million something.
Man, that's way more than I was thinking.
Yeah, well, it's been around for 100 years, and it got brought over to the U.S. From Japan to Hawaii to here, and so it's such a it's just historically it's been around for so long, but it's also like I call it like the gateway drug. It's like the gateway drug into spirituality, helping people to just recognize like everybody has an ability to work with energy. We're all energetic beings, and so we can access that within ourselves. And so everybody can do energy healing on themselves and others. And Reiki is just a wonderful format in which to give people that experience.
So what exactly is level 1 then? If there are 1 million of them, I guess if it's just getting your toes wet essentially for the person that doesn't necessarily know that they have that ability. Like, what's it like?
So there's an attunement process, which in the Reiki tradition, it's like a passing of kind of a turning on of the energy within the other person. And the class really just begins to walk people through practical, easy to learn how to use your hands, use your intention, and work with energy on yourself. Okay. And also we begin practicing on other people in the class.
All right. And then
by the time somebody finishes their level 1, and it can be taught from anywhere in like 1 day to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Or maybe even longer. But by the time they're completed and they walk out of there, they should, have a comfort with being able to say, okay, I can, work with this Reiki energy.
Okay. And so then what would the next, or you said there were 4 or there are a little bit more than that?
Well, level 2 takes a little bit deeper, and there's specific symbols that are different frequencies of the energy that we learn. I also teach in level 2 how to do sessions remotely. And so you can actually work on somebody and do a full Reiki energy session as powerfully if I'm working on you, and we're, 45 miles apart, or someone in China, or if you're right here in my, office space on my table. So they're a little bit different in terms of how they feel, whether you're in person or remote, but you can work on somebody's energy even if they're far away. So that's a big part of that level 2, and just kind of strengthening and helping the practitioners to more easily recognize their own power. Because the energy is not coming necessarily from outside. So it's kind of helping people to become empowered and confident and open up their own energy system, their own gifts, their intuition. So it enhances and amplifies that in level 2. And then level 3 is often a master class, which just takes all of that and, brings it home. And then there's a teacher class, which would be considered a level 4, which I mentioned includes an internship and a mentorship program.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier than people think it is, because energy healing's not hard. We just forgot how to do it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It's been around for like a really, really long time. I saw a little bit of the history right before we started, and that was like really interesting. It's been done for so long in the past. It's like it seems like there has to be some merit to it, right? If so many people are willing to fully commit to it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, with Reiki being around for 100 years, but there's energy healing and, in different systems, like in the Eastern, the energy healing's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's, there's probably not we were probably doing energy healing like way before. We kind of shut it down in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And especially like with the and it only helps that there are like all these other documented cases of it, that went along with it. Because at first I was just looking at it and I was like, all right, let me dig into it a little bit more. And I started reading about a bunch of cases, and it's like, all right, now it's like you can't just deny that. You know what I mean? If some people were like, yeah, I was sick one week and I started doing this, and now I'm fine. I'm like, all right, well, I guess it has to work, right?
Yeah, and for the person who really needs to feed the left brain and the science mind, I mean, quantum physics itself is, out there talking about frequency and energy in a way that is actually able to kind of marry the scientific and the new age world, if you will, together, because there's information that is coming to light that is, it's not contestable. And energy, and it started with Einstein, and I'm not very good at talking about it, but, everything, of course, is energy, right?
Yeah.
And so if everything's vibrating, everything has a frequency, and we have a frequency as humans. We can begin to work with frequency, and we can begin to work with energy. So if somebody's sick, right, say somebody has cancer, their frequency is extremely low. Their vibrational energy, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say they're operating at like 20 hertz. Okay. It's probably like 9. But then I come in and I can bring in a frequency that's like 90 hertz. And so, we allow that energy to, work in their system and elevate up their energy. And those lower frequencies can't hang out anymore, because the nature of energy is that if something's vibrating at a certain frequency, something at a lower vibrational frequency will automatically rise up to meet it. This has, sound and vibration and all this stuff. And so I just love how the science community is coming out with just more and more and more to prove what so many of us have just kind of been like, yeah, we knew that a long time ago. Now you have an equation for it. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's the other interesting thing too, is like so with this like massive like spreading of knowledge now more and more these days, do you find it helping the cause or hurting the cause, because more people are just looking at the stats and statistics of like other medicines? You know what I'm trying to say?
I think people are awakening all over the place. They're starting to know themselves better. They're starting to trust themselves better. They're starting to pay attention to their internal consciousness, as well as outside. Like, the consciousness in terms of how we respond to the earth now is in a way better place than it was, just 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And think about that. Yeah, it's a huge shift. And so that huge shift that's happening collectively is also happening collectively on an internal scale. And so whether somebody wakes up because they read something from a science perspective, or whether they wake up because they all of a sudden can, hear their intuition in a much more heightened way, and they're getting messages all the time, I don't care how they get the information. It's more so just about them awakening to themselves and not being asleep and just, going through the motions and the humdrum of life. It's like, let's wake up to our potential. Let's wake up so we can manifest our desires, right? Let's raise the consciousness of the planet. So that's my soapbox. Sorry.
No, not a problem. Yeah, and then also on your side, I saw you have like your specialty is helping those that are, energetically sensitive, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The term that has been floating around in more recent years is being an empath. And
Empath.
I
Okay.
just discovered that I was one a couple years ago, and it just opened up a huge um, understanding of myself. And then,
Uh-huh.
of course, every single client who I attract is an empath. And so, if anybody, if you just Google the word empath, and all this information comes up in terms of people who are people pleasers, they're helpers, they sometimes get overwhelmed in loud places. They tend to just be energetically sensitive and sometimes pick up the emotions and energy of other people,
Uh-huh.
and they think it's their own. So that tends to be the majority of my clientele. So,
Okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. So do you think, when you say they pick up on the energy of other people, uh, does that mean they're more like easily influenced or affected? You know?
absolutely. So, like, have you ever experienced where you're real happy, you're feeling really good, and you walk into a room and there's a bunch of people sitting there, and you don't know what's happened, but you can just feel like some
Yeah. Yeah.
tension and some density. Well, the person who's not the empath might notice that, but they're like, I'm cool. I'm going to stay in my high vibration. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
be happy and be me. But the person who's the empath is going to, like, sometimes get impacted by that. And then all of a sudden start to feel that internally, not just externally. They start to absorb the energy that's around them. And so I teach empaths how to, like, manage their energy, how to not be impacted by that kind of situation. And it goes a lot deeper in terms of often empaths are not fully fulfilling themselves because they're too busy helping everybody else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're like the save the world people, but really they've got gifts that they aren't fully utilizing. And so it's getting them to recognize, like, to kind of put themselves first, right? And to recognize their own power, and then they can save the world.
So how did you end up finding out that you were one yourself?
There's a brilliant article. It's kind of lengthy, but it's titled 30 Traits of an Empath.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened across it. And if anybody has any slight inclination thinking they might be, I definitely recommend reading this article and just kind of, going down the list of the 30 traits. It's a little bit of a lengthy article, and I would say I don't necessarily agree with 100% of it because, an empath is one category, and there's a million different variations of this category. And so I think, sometimes we'd like to put people in labels and boxes, and I think that's impossible. But, the majority of it helps to give you an impression of what one is. And I would definitely recommend anybody who has a question as to whether they are an empath or not, read that.
So do you think that because now there's more information that's accessible, it's got to be a harder time now to be an empath with so many other, vibrations and whatnot bouncing around and being thrown at you than it was, way back in the day?
Yeah, that in combination with people are becoming more sensitive to being empathic. And so whereas maybe it was a tolerable situation before, because people are becoming more sensitive as they open up, and people are kind of naturally opening up to spirituality, naturally opening up to energy, the potential for them to be feeling energy in a heightened way, I've found in my clients and in my students, things seem to be amplified a little bit in these times.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. So if those are the people that you are helping, and then let's talk about some of your services. Earlier, you talked about, I guess, the energy healing session, and you mentioned, was it on a massage table, and it's mostly, was it healing touch, like with transference of energy?
Yeah, in so many words, that's probably the best way to describe it. My first session with people is 2 hours. And so we actually spend about the first hour and 15 minutes in conversation, and I actually even do some energy work while we're sitting in my office. And then at some point we move over to the massage table, and I kind of just balance things out energetically. But like I said earlier in the show, I'm like a digger. So you come in and tell me all your junk. Like, I want you to tell me all your junk. Give me all your stuff. Bring it all on the table. And then we start to see, like, if there's a common theme as to, why certain things keep showing up. And we often can kind of even narrow it down to a common denominator. And I usually can, together we start to see if there's, something like a core issue, a core energy, a core emotion that is the root cause. And sometimes it's more than just one, but we start to, pull up some of that stuff so that they're not being held down by that anymore. They're literally not weighted down by, old stuff that they've been carrying around for sometimes decades.
Do you see some of those stuff being like self-imposed problems, or things that developed from like a bad experience in the past? Like it developed because of situation X.
Yeah, often it's in childhood because, 92% of our response to our external stimuli in life is based on our subconscious mind.
Uh-huh.
Well, our subconscious mind gets programmed from ages 0 through 7. Like when you're a child, you're just sitting there open.
Yeah, that's the crucial
in a
period.
theta state. Yeah, so it's like boom, download. And so usually it's stuff that roots back then, but I actually also even work in like past life stuff too sometimes. So it doesn't really matter the origin. It's really like we don't have to go psychoanalyzing that, but we do want to find like the core energy that's behind it. We want to find the fear. We want to find the anxiety. We want to find the anger. We want to find the pain, the wound, and whatever is associated with that, so we can move it out. And I don't want to say like I'm just, out here pulling a bunch of people's stuff up, because ultimately if you're clear, then you can get in alignment with what you do want to create in your life, right? And so the next phase is to just begin to really get to know yourself where you're not, there's no interference with all this old stuff. So then it's like, oh, I can remember who I really am, because all these other belief systems came from other people. But if that's not in the way anymore, I get to know myself, and I can be me, and I can like being me. And as a matter of fact, I can love myself. So if I would say like my number one goal for my clients is to just love themselves unconditionally, regardless of anything. Like if they can love and accept themselves, it's like the most powerful thing in the world.
Oh yeah, it's all uphill from there. I mean, yeah,
that's right.
It's all good.
There's no hill.
Yeah. And the other question I had about your services is I saw, was it Access Bars session, and I was that piqued my interest. I was wondering what exactly that was. If it's it looks like it's a step up from an energy healing session, or is it just a more intense one?
It's a specific process protocol, and it's through an organization called Access Consciousness.
Okay.
And within Access Consciousness is a class called Access Bars. And so by connecting certain energy points along the head, it actually clears out some of those old blocks in things that we were talking about, old belief systems, old traumas. And so it's a proprietary type practice. So in my journey, I've studied all this kind of stuff, and I just kind of pull what I need to as I need to in my sessions. So it's like Reiki was the foundation, and then I've studied all these other modalities, Access Bars being one of them, and they all just get to play together, right? They all get to intermingle, and the clients, hopefully have the best experience.
Yeah, so it sounds like then if there are some methods that you picked up and some things that you choose to incorporate, there has to be some other practices that you're choosing to not do, correct? Or is it?
I mean, I think there's just some things have resonated to like, oh, I really feel like I want to take this class, or oh, that just doesn't really feel like it's for me. But I think anybody who is drawn to meditation or energy healing, I think there's something different for everybody. Like Reiki is not for everybody. And I teach a workshop called Trinity Energy Progression. Well, that's not for everybody, but it just depends on where somebody's at. But there's so many different beautiful healing modalities out there that, I wouldn't discourage anyone from taking anything. You just kind of have to ask inside, is this for me?
Oh, definitely. And you mentioned that, that Trinity class, is that what you mentioned was going to be on this Saturday, or is that another thing?
No, that was actually last weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, that's helping people to really open up and help access their divine within and operate from that space. But this weekend, there's an event that I'm co-hosting with two other amazing women, and it's called a spiritual spa day.
Okay.
And it's kind of in the Addison, Dallas area. And so it'll be a 4-hour experience for attendees to come and choose a couple of different we'll have several healing practitioners there, as well as some body workers doing like reflexology and massage and that kind of thing. And so they'll get to participate and do like a half an hour sessions with some of these healing practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
But we've created this whole in this place where we're having the event. It's called the Vortex, and it is just infused with magical high vibration energy. And we're having all sorts of different I want to say events, but experiences for the attendees throughout the day, in addition to being able to experience Reiki or maybe a card reading or other different practitioners. And so from 2 to 6 p.m. this Saturday, it's called A Spiritual Spa Day. And that's the website, is aspiritualspaday.com if anybody's interested.
All right. Well, it sounds like the natural healing community in Dallas is pretty strong if everyone's working together and creating these events. How vast is it over here?
It's interesting. I moved here about 12 years ago. Oh gosh, I want to say 14 now.
Yeah.
I moved here in 2002 and then kind of started to get my feet wet in the community, and it was maybe a quarter of its size now. And of course we have this huge influx of people coming in from Toyota, California, and all these other companies who are migrating here. Mm-hmm. And so, it's become so much more of a melting pot that we're getting. The community is just so much bigger than it ever was. So, if anybody's interested in getting their feet wet, taking a meditation class or yoga class or energy healing class, I mean, you'd be hard pressed not to find one.
Now, have you been exposed to the healing practices, like where they originated in Japan or over in the eastern areas, or have you mostly been around in the Western Reiki healing?
Yeah, so when I studied Reiki, it was always over here on U.S. soil.
Okay.
But the last class I took was actually, there's still an organization in Japan called the Gakkai, and so it was the teachers and the people who were bringing that forward were trying to get it as close to that original teachings as possible. But yeah, all my training's been here.
Do you see any differences in how it's progressed?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because energy is shifting pretty significantly. Like we're raising consciousness, like as a collective, as a group, and so. Things are shifting very rapidly. That's probably another conversation.
Yeah. No, we still have a little time.
You can talk to the quantum physics guys about that too.
See, that was what I was wondering about. Is through this progression of time, I was wondering if old practitioners are doing things that these new practitioners aren't, or vice versa.
I believe that if we do something as we've always done it and are not open to evolving, then we kind of sell ourselves short. So, energy is static and fluid and evolving and changing. And I believe that, it's like the practice I do now with my clients is actually looks quite different than what my clients had like a year ago. Like sometimes they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, like we're doing things differently now. And I was like, yes, we are. That's why we need 2 hours. So I think for all the practitioners out there, they want the best for their clients. And I think it's just kind of staying in flow and how things change. And, I think that could pertain to all aspects of life, not just healing practitioners.
No, absolutely. Well, it's that time for our second and last music break of the night. So this is Girls by Skater and J. Rob. All right. That was Girls by Skater and J. Rob. Yanni Wanwason back here with Jennifer Cunnings. And Jennifer, it's almost that time we need to head on out of here. But I guess last thing I wanted to know was if has there do you normally see like what are the like worst case scenarios that you've seen people come out of with natural healing and that really convinces like, hey, this stuff is actually is something to look more closely into?
I would say worst case scenario is someone who has gotten to the point where they've gotten cancer and their life has shut down. And I'm not talking about healing from the cancer, but like,
like emotionally and
they
outlook.
were so, not operating from their self, right? And so just completely, living by the job, living by the family, not paying attention to what they wanted. And so it's like to bring somebody from that place where they had to get sick because they were just not paying attention to themselves and they had all this old stuff, and then being able to kind of like literally help them to pull themselves out of, not being them at all into them really stepping into themselves. I know I'm kind of, it's a vague example, but I have one, I don't want to give too much detail, but, really honoring the self and loving the self, doing things that bring them joy versus doing everything for everybody else to such a significant degree that you have to get sick, and so, yeah, it's just like, you just got to do you.
Yeah, no, completely understand.
I will help you do more of you.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you, your work, and some of your blogs and videos I saw as well. That would definitely be helpful for other people to see. Thanks.
Well, the website is myheartreiki.com. And you can, pretty much access everything through there. If anybody's interested in a session, there's a calendar appointment. And like you mentioned, I do sometimes post videos and blogs. It's pretty sporadic. But there's also all the events on there, as well as Tracy's events are on my website. And we have a space in Richardson, Texas, that has opportunities for classrooms. So if anybody's interested in just kind of getting their feet wet and want to go check out an event, all sorts of things coming up. I've got a 6-week series that I actually launched last week. So next week will be week 5. And it's an online series that, if someone wants to just kind of check things out from the comfort of their own home, that's there on the website too. So myheartreiki.com. And if anybody has questions, it's Jennifer at myheartreiki.
All right. Well, everyone listening, my name is Yanni, and be sure to catch this episode and all the other episodes on our website at catchtheviberadio.com. Until next week, thank you for listening.